Hello, friends. I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's fantastic. Everything here is great. It's Friday. I'm ready for a long weekend. I'm ready to do some projects, play some bass, play some. I've been playing Zelda a little bit, the new one, Echoes of Wisdom. Do some reading, maybe play some games. I don't know, a little bit of everything. Long weekend planned. Let's go. My friend Dennis, who asked the questions about talent, natural talent versus hard work, and a combination of the both, said something one night about when we were talking about me being a good conversationalist, and I took that like that was to me that was a I don't know that he knew this, but that was a huge compliment because that's something I've worked very hard on being. I can say most of my life, not a good conversationalist. People have always said I'm a good storyteller, that I can make stories interesting when I'm not telling you whatever, but that's a very different thing from being a conversationalist. And so I've had a good think about what it means to be a conversationalist and how to be a good conversationalist. And for me, the thing that I've had to learn to do is listen. I'm not, I've always been a good listener, meaning that I can sit and take in what you say, but I've never been good at reciprocating that, like, meaning that in order to have a good conversation, one person can't do all the talking, and the other person can't be waiting. You've probably had this conversation. You've probably had conversations with people where you recognize the person is just waiting for you to shut up. Like that you hit something and they really want to say something and it's going to have nothing to do with what you said. They're like, oh, you reminded me of a thing and I'm going to tell you as soon as you shut up. That's not a good conversationalist. A good conversationalist goes, all right, I remember that I wanted to say this thing, but first I'm going to ask a question based on what you said, or I'm going to ask you to expand on what you just said, and then I'll come back to that later. And that is the skill. Because, like anything, we all have a talent of some sort that you can do almost without thinking. Dennis is a musician, and I had this conversation with him. When you go on stage to play, you're not thinking about the music. Like that, musicians who have learned their songs can just kind of space out. And you can look around and you're just playing the music without thinking about it. As a drummer, I knew that feeling very well because you have to turn off the thinking about what your hands and feet are doing, or else they'll all start syncing and then you're just playing the same thing. You have to have this independence. Or just as a musician reading music, you have to be able to play while actively trying to decipher something, and there's a disconnect. Being a good conversationalist, it's the same thing. Learning to talk without thinking, and I know that sounds weird. That's an important skill to learn if you want to be good at being a conversationalist. And for me, the way I've gotten good at it is 8.5 years of this. It's 8.5 years, 5 days a week, pick a topic that I know a little bit about, maybe sometimes I know a lot about, and then talk about it for 10 minutes with no script, just camera on, let's go. And what it requires me to do is keep a running list in my head of bullet points that I want to hit. And while I'm telling you about one of those bullet points, I'm already like thinking about the next one. And that is a skill I didn't recognize that I would earn from doing this for 2,200 and some episodes. We've done 2,200 and some. That's a crazy amount of episodes. And it's a skill that I think is vital to being a good conversationalist. You have to be able to listen and talk, but also have some other process running that's keeping track of the conversation, that's keeping track of return points to go back to or questions to ask in the future or whatever. And I don't know that there's a way to teach that. You just have to do it. And for me, like I said, pick a subject. Pick something that you know a little bit about. Not a lot. Don't pick something you're the expert in because then you could talk forever. Pick something you know a very small amount about and just talk about it for 10 minutes. You don't have to record it. You don't have to put it on YouTube. You don't have to do it to another person. Just sit in a room and talk about a subject for 10 minutes and try really hard not to have a lot of dead silence. Try really hard not to and ah and meander your way through it. It's better, if you're going to and all, it's better to just not. To just have dead space. Have dead air. A few seconds is fine. Nobody's going to click off of the video because you didn't say or for a second. Have that dead space, reorganize, and then go back at it. You can do that in your room. You can do that anywhere. If you're embarrassed about it, obviously don't do it in a crowded space. But I think it's a really important skill to learn. And I wish I had learned how to develop it earlier in life. Because it is the key for me, having good reciprocal conversations where where we're talking and we're sharing back and forth. And for me, I maybe it's narcissism or just being egocentric or something like that, but for most of my life, I forgot to ask trailing questions. I forgot to include the other person. It would be the other person shares, a tidbit about their life, a story or whatever, and I immediately go, oh, I have one of those, and I share my version. And then I'm expecting them to continue that back and forth, when really all I did was say, cool story. Let me tell you my version of that story that, and it comes across as I'm just one-upping or something, even if my version of the story is a much lesser thing. You don't want to do that. Let them tell the story, ask some follow-up questions, engage with what they said, and then you can tell your story. That is an important thing. That's a very important part of it. It's I would say the most important part is making sure that the person that you're speaking to, for whatever reason, doesn't matter. This could be a personal conversation, a professional conversation. Make sure that person knows that you're paying attention. Give them some further details to what they said that says, hey, I'm paying attention to what you said and I'm interested in this point or I'm interested in that point. Don't talk over them. Let them, expound a little bit. You can carry that. That can carry a, quote, conversation. They can leave a conversation feeling great about you if all you did was ask more questions and let them tell more of their story and you just stayed out of it completely. Like, don't vomit back on them your version of that. They'll leave thinking you're the greatest conversationalist ever because all you did was listen to them. And that's you're feeding. It's mean to say you're feeding their ego, but that's basically what you're doing. You're making them feel important in that moment. And even if you have the upper hand, if you're the boss, you're making that employee feel like they were important in that moment because they are. The people in your life are important, and you have to accept that, and you have to treat them that way, and stop being the main character. That is maybe where this all heads. Stop being the main character. Learn to be a co-star. Doesn't mean you're not. It doesn't mean that you're a middling peon, whatever, if you're not the main character. You can be a co-star. You can recognize that there's hundreds of main characters around you, and you're allowed to interact and be main characters in your own story. That's okay. Your story isn't more important than theirs, though. Let them feel that through the way you talk. Hope that helps. I don't know. Just something I thought about while still thinking about this question about talent. Yeah. What do you got planned for the weekend? Anything exciting? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again Monday. Today's 1,000 plus little things happy, successful people do differently. We are learning 10 habits you must quit to be happy. Habit number 6. Hey, this ties in to what we were just talking about. Quit criticizing others. The negativity you bleed out towards others will gradually cripple your own happiness. So stop worrying about the flaws you see in everyone else and focus on yourself. Let the constant growth and improvement in your own life keep you so busy that you have no time left to criticize others. I agree with that very much, although I heavily critique other people. The difference is I critique their actions because that helps me understand why I don't want to do that. But I think it's really important to be supportive. Be open. criticizing others is not doing anybody any good unless they're asking for it. If they're asking for your critique, go for it.